Welcome to the Sea Airspace Symposium. Our symposium right now is Our Navy Life, and its intent is to have a nice, cozy discussion about navigating the Navy life and what it means to be a modern Navy family. So greetings, my name is Beth Weber, and I am the chairman for Naval Services Family Line. And Naval Services Family Line is a 57-year-old all-volunteer nonprofit whose mission is to empower the Navy spouse to navigate the unique challenges of the military lifestyle and ensure that their journey is as fulfilling and as meaningful as possible. We are one of the first military-connected nonprofits founded by spouses for spouses in 1965. A group of women at the time gathered around the table, and 3 months later they had formed a nonprofit. Now there's about 40,000 nonprofits, but we were one of the first, and to my knowledge, some of our sister services do not have a connected association like we do, or nonprofit like we do. We were instrumental in we're a catalyst in founding the Ombudsman Program, Fleet and Family Service. And our programs are Compass Core, and we have the Naval Spouse Leadership Corps Steering Committee, which guide our senior leaders, the CMC spouses, CO spouses, and XO spouses as they embark on their command tours. We have a publication series, and also this past October, we started Our Navy Life, which is what we've termed this discussion, a podcast. We found through our strategic plan that military spouses or Navy spouses wanted to be connected all over the world. So we started the podcast. Sergio is going to tell us a little bit more about that. And today, we are honored to have three very visible, highly recognizable Navy spouses to join us to help us navigate the topic. So to my left is Evelyn Honey. Then there is Sergio Rodriguez and Michelle Norman. Before I introduce them, I want to thank the Navy League for their many years of supporting our mission and their partnership, and for creating this format so that we can fully discuss these topics today. Specifically, I would like to thank Mike Stevens, who I actually met at a Family Line event. Evelyn was there as well, and he was there with his wife, Teresa. That was almost 10 years ago. And I was really moved by his remarks, and they really helped us as we were embarking on our XO tour. Also, I would like to thank Julia Simpson, who is the Senior Director for Executive Affairs, and she's always finds time to help us. So I am going to introduce our panelists. So Evelyn, as I mentioned, I met her at the same Family Line event 10 years ago. And she is the Senior Advisor for Naval Services Family Line. She is the Ombudsman at Large, which she'll talk more about. She is a mom, she's a Navy spouse, she has been a small business owner, and she just has so many talents. She is the spouse of the 16th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy. And often I know I talk to her husband where, he walks into the room and they say, "Are you Evelyn's husband?" Or they ask him where Evelyn is. She is a force to be reckoned with, and they are very much a power couple. They really are serving the Navy well. Next I have Sergio Rodriguez. He is dad to Karma. He is a Navy spouse. He's a volunteer, super volunteer. He's an Army veteran, mentor. He is a leader and a caseworker with Navy Marine Corps Relief. I know there's some of you guys in the house here. He does a lot and he's many awards. He just got recognized last week, I think, at their ball. He's been a FRG president. He's been an ombudsman, and he was just relinquished his term as the 2022 Armed Forces Insurance Navy Spouse of the Year. And he is our co-host of the Our Navy Life podcast, and he'll tell you more about that. And at the end is Michelle Norman, who I've known for many years, and I just met in person, and it was a pleasure to finally meet you. She started off as a petroleum engineer. And then she has found her, she sailed around the world with her husband, who's in the front row there. And she is a mom. She has 2 kids. She's the executive director of Partners in Promise. She'll tell us more about that. She's on a spouse advisory board for MOA. She is on the Blue Star Family Policy and Research Board. And she is the 2019 Armed Forces Insurance Agency Navy Spouse of the Year. So we have a lot of talent on this stage. And so I'm so impressed to be on the stage with you guys. So what I would like to do is each of them are going to go through and kind of take 3 to 5 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes, kind of tell them their story, tell a little bit more about the program, and then if you have any questions out in the audience, you can go ahead and ask some questions. Go ahead, Evelyn.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. I'll tell a little bit more about myself. Obviously, I've been married to Jim going on 34 years. We got married very young, and so we've been living this Navy life. I don't know if I've quite modernized it or not, but I think we do pretty well navigating through it. I think it's important that we connect as families, as service members, and so I have the pleasure of serving as the Ombudsman at Large, as he serves as the MCPON, the 16th MCPON, and I think one of the most important things that I like to get out there right now is how much we do need to reconnect for many reasons, partly because I think it's good for us as for mental health, for just having friends to talk to in hard times, and I think right now we haven't been doing it as much, and I would really love, I don't know how to put a title on that, because I really would just love to get us all back together and doing things and bringing each other closer, so that when we do face tough times, we have our families there to support us. That's one of the things I do. I serve as the advisor to Naval Service Family Line. I've been involved with them for probably about 8 years with the course in Rhode Island for the CMC course, and I truly enjoy that, because I do think that helping other spouses find where they would like to put efforts into being involved within the command tour is important. Sometimes you just don't know what it's going to entail, so just being able to talk to someone and ask questions, I think, is very important. And I think there's a place for everyone, whether you're an executive, whether you're a homemaker, whether you're a business owner, entrepreneur. There's a place. There really is. And so I enjoy volunteering with Naval Service Family Line. Other than that, I'm probably just that Navy spouse that's running around saying hello to people. So, hi, Sergio. You're next.
Hey. Hey guys, so my name is Sergio Rodriguez. I am the 2022 Armed Forces Insurance Navy Spouse of the Year. And quite honestly, I'm still in shock that I was able to achieve such a prestigious award. That it's one of the few programs, the most noted one, that recognizes spouses for their hard work in the community. And so with that, I have been involved with Naval Services Family Line. I started participating in panels back in 2015 after a friend of mine introduced me to it, a senior spouse that wanted to show me about Naval Services Family Line, and I didn't know that such a program existed. And so one of the things that I appreciate about it, it's spouses teaching spouses. It's, those that have walked the life, that are living the life, that are showing others what this life is about. Because I can tell you, as a young spouse or getting into this, you really don't know. I mean, you could throw me out in the Army and I could tell you exactly what I need to do, how I need to do it. But as a spouse, your life is completely different than active duty. So I was very lost on where my place was and what I'm supposed to do. And then on the Navy side now. So I was able to get the education I needed through Naval Services Family Line, through their Compass program that teaches you everything from, the naval heritage on up to acronyms, to how to have a successful PCS and how to do your housing, how to understand like the LES, like if you guys are getting paid correctly, and then just overall fully understanding what this Navy life is going to be like. I am also a advocate for housing, so with Armed Forces Housing Advocates, I help families that are dealing with any kind of housing within the military sector. I volunteer with Navy Marine Corps Relief Society. My recent duties, because my wife recently PCS'd, was in Kings Bay, Georgia, where I was the lead caseworker, and I had an opportunity to review all of the cases that we got to work in the office from some of the other caseworkers, and even my own, which I took a lot of joy and pride in, because you're able to sit there and help a family member that is going through something, or a service member, and help them get back on track and give them a hope and opportunity. So that is, one of the things that really has been amazing for me as far as my volunteerism. And now I am the host of the Our Navy Live podcast for Naval Services Family Line, which is great. I've had an amazing opportunity to interview several individuals that I never in my life would have hoped or thought that I would talk to, and it's been very rewarding. I got to interview my new friend here, Evelyn. It's like because of this podcast, like I didn't even, we didn't know each other, and before we knew it, we were talking about where we lived, where we came up, and there was a small world moment where it's like, oh, I used to go to that lake by your house where you lived. And it's just like, wait a minute, like, your life's crossed so much that you don't even realize it's such a big world out there. And then you have these small world moments, and even here in this room, you guys probably have ran into people that you've met somewhere else in a different state, and now you're running into them again. And so these organizations have provided me such a great opportunity with just connecting and having the opportunity to share just my volunteerism, my advocacy, and just helping other people. And, even meeting my friend Michelle here, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to her.
Thank you, Sergio. And first of all, it is such a privilege to be up here with these amazing advocates. We're very blessed in our Navy community to have so many military spouses who have found their passion and recognize the importance of connection that you said, Evelyn, because that really is what make or break this military adventure. But as Beth said, been married for 27 years to this guy on the front. It's been a fantastic journey for us. We've lived all over the world, and initially I was working for the government, first of all, petroleum engineering, but that didn't last very long because we left Texas pretty quickly. So, as most military spouses do, we reinvent ourselves, we pivot. I became an environmental engineer and worked for the Navy in about 3 or 4 different bases. And then we decided we wanted to start a family. And, I'm a big fan of just trusting, in what the plan is. And our daughter was born very early, and that really changed my whole trajectory of not worrying about working, but then all of a sudden finding what my new passion was going to be, and that was to be an advocate. She was born early, she has multiple disabilities, and we had a desire to keep serving. So how do you manage this military lifestyle with a family who moves 2 to 3 years on average, but also make sure you're meeting the needs of your children? And so that really was the beginning of my life as an advocate, and it turned into more than what I bargained for as far as her education goes. And so we founded Partners in Promise with other military spouses who have children in special education because of those challenges that we see as you move from one state to another state, one school district to another school district, and receiving that specific programming that our kids need to access an appropriate education. And so I would say that this tribe that you find within the Navy, they have really been supportive, not even just the Navy and Marine Corps. I see a lot of friends out there. You have to surround yourself by people who are passionate, that want to make this a better place than what we found it from. And so the work that we do is not necessarily for our immediate families, but is for those future sailors' families that come after us. We know there's a lot of challenges right now. We know that taking care of people is so important. SecDef talked about it, CNO talked about it, the Vice CNO. We need to take care of people. And if we're having these challenges with recruitment, retention, we need to start looking at how do we fill these gaps? Because we know that DoD can't do it all, and that's where the work that we do kind of fills those gaps in.
I don't know if there's any questions yet, otherwise I will keep going with some questions. Okay. So, Evelyn, can you tell me a little bit more about your ombudsman at large role, what you do in that capacity? Have you traveled? Are there any things that you're seeing out in your travels that are impacting Navy families?
So Jim just took over in September, so we getting used to the opportunity that we have to create, some change and impact things for the better. We've done some traveling together, and we visit a lot of fleet concentration areas, and I can't tell you, we had one gentleman stand up and he said, I have a list of questions, but the most important one hasn't been answered. Why are they closing the hobby shop? That's where I connect with people. And it's like, we know that connecting is so important, and you hear that everywhere. So how do we do that? What are we going to advocate to continue to have places for our service members and our families to connect? They're going away. Our hobby shops, our bowling alleys, all those things are going away. And so we have to find a way to bring people together again. They want it. They truly do. We are hearing that a lot. Also, that's, a lot of what I hear when I travel with Jim. And also, there's the questions. You have the questions, the famous beard question. But anyhow, there's questions about, the medical. There's all those other questions. And those are things that I know that people are working on, and we'll get to a level of resolution on them to make them better. But who's working on bringing us together as a family? So I focus on that a lot, and giving ideas of what we can do to bring us together. Also, I had the opportunity to travel with the IG assessment team to Hawaii for 12 days and go on the different assessments that they were doing with housing and all those different, DECA and all those different commands there in Hawaii, which was nice because we had just come from Hawaii. So as soon as housing started telling one lie, I was like, no. So I was like, wait, I just left here. I know this. I know the answer, And so it really gave me an opportunity to work with them and help them really know what questions need to be asked. And I think that, that's one of the blessings of being able to serve as the Ombudsman at large, just giving us the opportunity to giving myself an opportunity to have a bigger impact when these decisions are being made and conveyed to those people that are going to move these programs along, whether it be housing, whether it be DECA, whatever it may be, suicide prevention, any of that. And so that was a very eye-opening experience to be able to go with them, and something I never thought I would do. But I think it's really important to continue traveling with them and in the near future. So that's kind of what I've been doing. It's been about 7 months now, and I'm sure we're going to continue to do more of it. So,
I'd like to reemphasize the connection. It's really important. One of the reasons Family Line was started because they wanted to be a source of connection. Newsletters, it was newsletters, so you fold up the newsletter, put it in an envelope, and send it around the world. But now we realize that we need to connect with the modern Navy family, and one of the things that Family Line did was start Our Navy podcast, because we found that even though there are people in fleet concentration places, there's people in reserves or isolated duty stations that wanted that connection to the Navy and weren't getting it. So when you have the podcast, while you're doing your walk, while you're, cooking dinner, or you're in the car pickup line, they can get that connection. And so we have had our podcast, and I'll let Sergio talk more about that. But that was our kind of one of the source of connection. We want to be the source of connection. That's why we founded Family Line, and we need to be modern about it. So Sergio, can you tell us a little bit more about the podcast? And I think there's an episode coming out tomorrow.
Yes, there is. She's giving away some information. But, we actually do have it. I'll start there since you mentioned it. But we do have a podcast coming out tomorrow. It's going to be our Happy Birthday Chiefs episode, which is all about our Chiefs. They just celebrated their birthday on April 1st, which, was just right now. And so happy birthday to all the Chiefs again. And so that's going to be one of our episodes here in season 2, because we just started season 2. We successfully completed season 1, which was really great because we spoke to leadership spouses, which one of them was Miss Honey. So, and we spoke to Miss Gilday, the CNO spouse, and we talked about issues that, circle military life and military spouses. And the good thing about having this podcast is giving people a way to identify and relate to others that are going through the same thing, and it gives them access on a broader scale where you don't have to just be in this room. Like, our podcast is anywhere that you can hear a podcast. Like, you can find us on Spotify, you can find us everywhere. And so what we're doing is we have 4 pillars that we talk about. We're talking about military life, like PCSing, trying to find housing, just those different things that is all about military life. Then we're talking about advocacy, so we're talking about policies and different changes that are going on. Then we talk about naval history, we're talking about the heritage. And then we also have spouse features where we're talking to spouses that are, out there kicking down doors, making changes, and, just doing amazing things in our community, kind of like my friend Holly right here that, started her organization as well. You guys can talk to her about it. But, just talking to these folks and being able to share their stories on what they're doing and how they're keeping it together as a military spouse, a Navy spouse. We also have another episode coming up for season 2, which is for the month of the military child, and I got a chance to interview Miss Asha Bass, which it won for the National Military Youth, and for 2022, fun coincidence is she won out of Kings Bay, Georgia, and that's where I also won for Navy Spouse of the Year. So there we both are from this little base down in southeast Georgia, and we're making headlines for that little area. And just talking to her, connecting with her, sharing her story, and then having her be able to amplify her story to others are things that we're looking to do. And I mean, we've been pretty good at getting the word out there. We've had over 2,000 listens. We get about 84 clicks to every episode that we've released, where people are listening at least 84 times to it. And so, and what we've also included now is, Beth mentioned how this was formulated by women way back when. But as you can see now, we got male spouses out there. And so we've got to represent. We got to let them know that we're here as well. And so Naval Services Family Line has been great when it comes to inclusion and letting us also be part of this. And it's not just the wives club, it's not the wives. And so our listeners, from the stats we have 10% of our listeners are males from our stats. And, for an organization like this to have that many males already tuning in out of all of the listens we've had is pretty remarkable, because there's really not a whole lot for us out there as male spouses. And so, this right here, I'm trying to make it as friendly as possible on both sides. So it's not just oriented on, the female side or the male side. It's for the families. And so we talk about we have a lot of hard conversations about what's going out there for the families. And, we're going to continue to do so, because we got to get the word out and we got to let folks know what's going on out there. So I'm enjoying my time. Thank you.
So it sounds like you have advocacy topics and looking for people that are doing really great things in the community. And I would look to your left, because she would be a great. Yeah, she would be a great. We've had her on CORE before, but she would make. I think Stacy, she's in the audience. She helped us with that interview. And so she would be a great guest. But tell us about your advocacy. I'm putting you on the spot here.
Thank you.
Tell us about your program, because it really is a tremendous program. I know that you guys just did a survey. And if you want to share anything about that, and I think we might have a question out there. But go ahead.
Sure.
And then go ahead.
Thank you so much. So yes, we are a part of the EFMP program, which stands for the Exceptional Family Member Program. And that is what our organization really has been working to improve over the past few years. I had the great opportunity to testify in front of the House Armed Services Committee in 2020 about this program and the challenges that we were facing as a family, just sharing our lived experience. And that led to very significant improvements to the program from the 2021 NDAA. although we're still waiting for the standardization plan to happen, which we think is going to come out in the spring of this year. That kind of really brought a lot of momentum to our community of folks who have children that have specialized medical and education needs. And so when we started off in this journey, we noticed there wasn't a lot of data. We looked around, we weren't being surveyed, no one was really asking about what our experiences were, so, you know, 4 of us spouses decided, okay, well, let's do our survey and see if we're onto something. Of course, it was very archaic. It was a Google form survey that said, how was your experience? And it was just a qualitative, you know, it gave us the idea, though, that we were onto something. And so following that, we partnered with UNC, and then the past 2 years, The Ohio State University, to conduct research, quantitative and qualitative, about what are the experiences of these families as they move, very often from different school districts who have IEPs, or individualized education programs, 504 plans, you know, what's happening with this very unusual demographic group. And what we're finding is it's a big challenge all the way around. We have a federal law that kind of oversees special education. It's called Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which we call IDEA. And there's very specific timelines of receiving education as soon as you move to a new school. But we were finding that most families were waiting 5.75 months after moving before they were receiving those education services. And that's a big red flag, and it's a big violation. And no one really was kind of poking their eyes and looking into this information. And then this past survey, though, we do have some bittersweet information. We noted that 78% of our families were experiencing tremendous stress for caregiving, for going through this education journey with their child, but it did not impact their desire to serve. And so these families are in it. They are here to serve our wonderful Navy. How can we better support them? And so that's the kind of data that we can, you know, educate and advise our leaders within DoD, not just Navy, congressional, state, and local leaders on how we can help these transitions for these families so that they can continue to serve this great country. So we really do, you know, we're the only data-informed organization out there, and that's what we hope to keep doing the next few years to hopefully bring top-level change. You know, you can always help one family at a time. We get lots of inquiries every week, but really, how do you make policy changes that will impact more of our community? And so, yeah, they want to serve. And I think that's how do we continue that? Because we know that that's an issue for a lot of our families.
Thank you. I think we have a question. Are you? Okay.
Can I be heard? There we go. That's a couple of questions here. First of all, Evelyn, can you tell me who the NAVSER PAC Force Ombudsman is?
I'm sorry,
I'd like
who?
to make the Naval Surface Force specific. Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Jay Rindler. I'm with the San Diego Navy League.
Okay.
And I also have the privilege of chairing the Operation Welcome Committee, and I'm also the Director of Field Operations, one of the reasons I'm out here. The focus of the committee that I'm part of is to help make posters for the sailors when they're coming back. I don't know if anybody here have ever experienced any of that are based out of the West Coast.
The homecoming signs, yes. I still have mine.
You still have yours? Oh, wow. I'm impressed, and thank you. Well, because of COVID, a lot of things, well, we all know what happened there. Well, we used to be part of the loop, and it used to be the NAVSER PAC Force Ombudsman that used to call meetings to prepare for homecomings. And also, we were also involved with Liberty Housing and USO, Armed Services, YMCA. And it's all by, how would you say, word of mouth that something is happening. With respects to operational security, how do we overcome that so we could know who's coming back when without, like I said, without compromising national security? I believe that's my questions right there. Thank you.
Okay. So I know that Navy League for many, many years has been part of our homecomings. Homecomings are so very important. They really mark the end of a very stressful period, and it's a very happy day for many families. And we have always appreciated what was done for us there by Navy League and other organizations. So I'm not sure why the connection is not being made, but I know that after COVID, we need a big reset with many of our programs, the communication. So I'd be happy to connect you with those that you should be able to talk to make sure that the homecomings are happening, because I'm not sure. It was really sad when I saw that our homecomings were very different during COVID and even just as COVID passed. And it really, when Jim went away to Afghanistan, he was gone for a year. He came home on R&R, but then went back. And when he came home at the end of that year, I remembered that there was something that wasn't right, and I couldn't pinpoint what it was. And it was the fact that I ended up figuring it out about a month later, that I felt like the deployment never ended. He was going to leave again. And why was that? Because I, as a surface spouse, was used to having that homecoming. I was used to having that homecoming, and it marked the end of that period. And so we have to get that back. We have to have the proper homecomings. We can't be kept 500 yards away from our ship. We need to be there as families to welcome home our sailors, and I'd be happy to talk to you and make sure that we get back to that, because we can't just accept that it changed. No, we have to get back to making sure that our family reuniting, it happens, and it happens properly, because although I picked Jim up at the airport that day, it didn't seem like it had stopped. And I know that other services are used to that, but us in the Navy, in the surface world, that is our homecoming. That is the best day of deployment, is homecoming, right? And so we got to get it right. So I'd be happy to work with you on that. You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions? Okay. Let's see. So what do you think some of you have discussed it, what are some of the current challenges? I know we discussed connection. What do you think some of the current challenges that the modern Navy family is facing? It seems like a lot of it is related to COVID. And as Evelyn and many of you said, we need to get around that. And do you have any thoughts or suggestions? Okay, Michelle. Thank you.
So, I think the modern military family has changed, for sure, in the way it looks. Now we have dual income families, right? So childcare is an issue. Sometimes they're moving, sometimes they're opting not to move. So we do have some geo-batching families as well, who are trying to have some stabilization to their life. And I think that there's a lot of, we talk about volunteering all the time, it really impacts that, because we now have, these positions to help connect. They're not necessarily being filled because families are stretched. You have areas that are high inflation that also impact, their ability to be able to do the things that maybe they're passionate about. So I think just seeing that it's not like in the 1950s where it was assumed that the service member went to work and the spouse stays home, I think it's just a little bit different of a makeup now. How do we, and I see it also with spouse club groups, and I'm not sure if you see it as well. I've seen FRGs disestablished. I've seen folks who want to turn to Facebook instead of actually doing in-person events. And so we are lacking that connection piece. And so that can also bring in other issues. When you feel like you don't have that community, and maybe we're possibly seeing that with our sailors as well. How do we get them back to past the COVID thing? Because you're right, there's no reason anymore. We need to get back to what we were doing and create those strong bonds again. Sergio?
I know for us, some of the conversations that we have had about, certain challenges that are facing our communities right now are food insecurity. And this is something that we've talked about on our podcast as well. We're talked about housing, the lack of, and then how expensive it has been out. For a while out there, it was really bad for our military families with PCSing and trying to find something affordable and then finding enough space in housing. We also had, communication is the struggle with a lot of our spouses. And when we talk about communication, we're talking about healthy communication where, spouses, and we had a really good episode on it where we had Miss Lindsay, Dr. Lindsay Kavanaugh, that came on and was able to talk to spouses and let them hear that, your active duty member has, multiple hats that they wear, and sometimes they don't take off that hat when they come home. So your communication that you're trying to do as a spouse isn't working because they're not understanding because they're wearing that active duty hat. And so there was a way to, have them take off that hat, come just that spouse, that significant other, and then that way you could have healthy communication. So their challenges are out there, and we're trying to figure out how to, spearhead those. The food insecurity one, I think, is a really big one that we got to figure out, like, yesterday. And then, of course, mental health is the final one. We're having an episode this season on mental health. It's going to be a little bit longer than most of our episodes because it's such a sensitive subject, and some people don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation, but we got to talk about it. Mental health is something that is very important, and we need to give it attention.
Evelyn?
I would say, yes, I think, we have the big things, again, we talked about mental health, food insecurity, but I think a lot of times it's people just don't know where their resources are and how many resources are out there. There is so much out there that's underutilized. It's unbelievable. And it takes being part of your community to find out what it is, because there's never going to be one website that's going to give you every answer. I had voted about 10 years ago, and Admiral Ben Buskert said no. I said, can we get a Tuesday folder attached to our sailor so that with everything that came out that week for spouses, because we do not get told everything. I'm very blessed. Jim does share a lot with me, and he does tell me a lot, but a lot of spouses do not have that information. So, we're working hard to try to get a lot of information out and make sure that people understand how to navigate the different systems that are out there, because they just really do not know. Most of the problems I would attribute, a great percentage I would attribute to lack of knowledge of what's truly out there to help you. Many people don't know that a sailor going to boot camp actually gets a move. They don't know that. When their child goes off to boot camp and leaves all their stuff back at your house, they actually will come and pack that out. People don't know this. And they should, right? So it's hard to get it out there, especially right now, but we got to do the great reset. We got to get past this COVID and start our leaders having, those forums, our families having the forums to share and educate about these resources that are out there.
Before we get to the question there in the corner. One of the things too Family Line does is a lot of parents are finding us, and a lot of parents are more involved these days. I think some of you in uniform know that. They want to know what's going on. So we do have Anchors Away, which people can, parents, family members, girlfriends, boyfriends can look at, and then their Anchors Away, and then My Navy Family app. I would encourage for those in uniform to utilize that resource or point family members in that direction. So I will take, Mick Pond, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. I know we're getting close to the end of the session, but
nope.
I appreciate you making a little bit more time for me. And I don't have anybody in particular needs to answer this question. It could be, Michelle, you spoke about, the transformation of the new modern family. It could be about connections, as Evelyn has spoken about, or Sergio, you talk about some of just the basic needs of our military families. Everything that you have spoken about was what the different military families could be adjusted in their lives, or how they can come together to support one another. What are some things that we should be changing about our military to support and be there for that modern family? What do we need to be transforming about our military? We largely still have the same structure we had in place with the World War II, military. As we go into a modern age with modern families, 50% of our military families are married today, and 41% of those military families are mill-to-mill families. So it's much different than it was even when I came in the mid-'80s. So I'd be very interested in hearing about what we need to be doing differently from the Navy to support our Navy families.
Yes, sir, I agree. My first answer would be messaging. The Navy has incredible resources, and families don't know that those resources exist. And it gets to the point where sometimes it's resource overload. Like, oh, to go military one source, go here, go there. And families, they want an answer, they want it now. They're in crisis mode, and they don't want to have to go through 4 different layers on a website just to get to the answer. I know that from some of our survey data, we asked about special education attorneys, that the Navy has done a fantastic job putting on all of our installations and having available to families. But only 76% of our families didn't even know it existed. And so here we are leading the way among all the service branches, along with the Marine Corps, and families don't even know to utilize it. So I think messaging is a big part. How are people receiving information in this modern family lifestyle? I'm old, so I go through Facebook, but there are plenty of younger families that go through Instagram and TikTok, and I know I don't want to go TikTok, but there has to be a better way of communicating with their families, and I don't have the answer to that, but I think that there are times where the military can be risk averse, and they don't want to get ahead of the game with messaging, and we just got to figure out investing perhaps in that area to be able to ensure that those quality of life, those resources are available to our families.
So I'm going to go ahead and say, he did not tell me this question. I did not, he doesn't know what my answer is going to be, but I'm going to give it to you. My Tuesday folder, thank you very much. But anyhow, I agree. There's got to be a way for us to communicate directly to the family. And I think my understanding is that there's something in the works that they're looking into, and I need to find out more information about when, spouses receive their ID cards, that they register some sort of an email address or something to that effect, so that information as it comes out about programs and things would go directly to them. I heard that this is someone's advocating for it, but we need something similar to that, because when our service members away, they're not giving us the information. So when they get back 6 months later, you're already 6 months behind if you're not paying attention. And getting the same information emailed to you from 20 different sources isn't the answer either, because then people shut that email off because they're getting the same information from everybody, right? And so that's not quite a good system either. But I think that if we could get to a point where we can communicate directly to the families with some sort of an email or when this program changes, when the exceptional family member program changes, or and I'm not talking about, telling us when a ship's coming in or a submarine's coming in. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the bigger Navy programs. When we get them, people just don't even know about them. Very few people are aware of them. And so we need to find a mechanism to communicate directly to those spouses, and also get them to understand, get the service member to understand that the spouse needs to get this information so that they have it and educate themselves on it. And if they choose not to, then it's on them. Because we try, and the way we're doing it now, very few people are getting that information because they're not going to the correct platforms.
So I have
Okay.
a little bit about this. So thank you for that question. It's actually a great question. And what sorry. So what I'm hearing from both sides of me right now is all about communication. And what I would like to see is the Navy take on a role, kind of like how you guys set up your My Navy HR for your active duty members, similar for the families. Because families, when it comes to the communication part, if we're not having that communication, clear, concise communication, all it does is leave confusion. And if you're waiting for your service member to bring in information that they might not understand, you're still confused. And if you want to take the information and be able to disseminate it correctly, it needs to come from the source. So if families had something like a My Navy HR that we could go to and say, hey, like, I'm going through this, like, get me into the right contact, figure this, or whatever needs to happen. And I know that that role can be played by an ombudsman, but we all know that, an ombudsman, or even if they have co-ombudsman for some of these commands, are like inundated with a lot of stuff. So if we can, source some of that out to where they can reach out, I think that would relieve a lot of problems within the families, where they can have somebody. And it might even just be sending them an email with a website that they need to go to, or a phone number to an individual that they need because they just can't find it. And not everybody's going to go to Facebook, not everybody's going to go to Instagram, but if they have that phone number that they can call and everybody has it saved in their phone, you know, there's an option. Or if they could fill out a form and send it to a family version of My Navy HR, I think that would be amazing.
And I do have a shameless plug. So the Navy Family app, I don't know if everyone here has seen it, it has a lot of information, and we need to get it out to families because it's not done. It should be on every family member's phone. There is so much information in there, and the more we use it, the more we can communicate. Now, if we could get it, you know, make sure that that's what we can send out to people when they get their ID cards, that would be good too. Just load it.
I agree, and if I can add one more thing, perhaps improving MOUs with private and non-DOD organizations out in the community that are doing great work. I think it's sometimes very difficult to access or to bring these resources onto bases. So improving MOUs and ensuring that, understanding that there's people that are, you know, doing great work for that community, but sometimes it's really difficult with all the red tape to get access and to be able to tell the community, the military community, what they have to offer.
So our time is about done, but what I want to do is, many of you probably didn't get to ask your questions, may have follow-on questions, may be on your drive home and say, I should have asked. So I want to go down one by one. What is the best way to get a hold of you guys if anybody has any follow-on questions? Because I know you have an ombudsman at large. Don't you have a email?
Yes, thank you for telling
Okay,
me what
yes.
it is. I always say the AOL at large, but no, it's OAL.evelynhoney@gmail.com.
Okay. And Sergio, I know what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So all of my contacts are the same. So mine is going to be at Sergio M. Soy, which is Military Spouse of the Year 2022. So Sergio M. Soy 2022, and that could be found on Instagram, on Twitter, or Facebook.
There you go. And Michelle, put in a plug for yourself and Partners in Promise, because there's that survey out there and people might want to read it in more detail.
Thank you. So you can be reached at thepromiseact.org, and you can reach us at info@partnersinpromise.org. And we're all on all the social media, probably not as many as him, but yes, we're out there.
So I would encourage you guys to continue the conversation outside of this forum right here. Reach out to them. They're tremendous resources for the Navy community. We're so blessed to have such talented Navy spouse leaders in the forefront. I also want to extend a thank you to Mike Stevens. I see his wife Teresa. You were in the audience. You were with him when I saw him speak 10 years ago, and I just really thought you did a great job. Teresa always by his side. Such a support to him, and you made an impact on me 10 years ago. But the podcast is dropping tomorrow, and we're going to talk we're celebrating the chief, so we have a chief spouse, and she talks about her journey through the CPO season, and then Mike Stevens is going to finish it up with the last half of the podcast. So tomorrow, Apple, Spotify, download that, and I know Mick Pond, he's ready to go. He's going to listen to it. So just continue us on our journey, our Navy Life podcast, and thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your evening and a great rest of your conference.